Hey yo, welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming. If again, for those that are not familiar with my channel, I just talk about random stuff here and there, nothing too out of the ordinary. Today, more than anything else, I'm just going to talk about, of course, the Heat versus the Nuggets, but more of a case for like not exactly what went wrong, honestly, because in game four, game five, which I called basically like as the Nuggets were coming, the only way the Nuggets Heat would able to be win game five was if Butler was able to perform, which he started to come in towards the end of the game, which is interesting. Towards the end, he was coming in. He started producing at the end of the game, but at the same time, towards the during the game itself, he was pretty much almost non-existent in ways. And the other factor is like as I mentioned, one of the big people is not containing Jokic, but containing Murray. And it seems like you would have to contain Porter and Gordon a little bit, but more Murray, which was almost the case. But I guess it was a situation where, remember, it was a close game. This is a game that the Heat could have won, quite honestly. It just towards the tail end of it, basically, it was one of those things where I don't know why they were playing nonchalantly, quite honestly, in the aspect of. They were playing really nonchalantly towards the like the tail end, especially when there was like 20 seconds left to go, and like they weren't doing much. I mean, like they were inbounding the ball, they were down by three, and like I was like, you're going to make a contested three, which made no sense, honestly. So it was weird, but in any case, the Nuggets won, which I knew was going to happen. I said it was only going to be 5 or 6 games based on game one and game two, and game three, of course, for sure. So I knew from game three. I mean, if the Heat were not gonna do what they were supposed to do, then they were going to lose the series no matter what. The thing is like, let's not take it away from the Heat. They did come out and do something really well, but similar to what the '99 Knicks did, the Heat were, I mean, not the Heat, the Nuggets were just too much, specifically their center. The Knicks had no center. The Heat, they did have a center, but at the same time, their offense wasn't that into it seems, per se. And I think the Nuggets knew how to contain Bam Adebayo. Honestly, looking at the stats, I mean, the Heat had a better free throw percentage, quite honestly. Way better free throw percentage. The assists were, like, of course, almost evened out in a ways. The turnovers, I mean, honestly, the Nuggets gave out more turnovers than the Heat. And the fact is, let's not forget, like in the first quarter, the Heat were shooting miserably, but they were still in it. Their defense was decent enough to keep them in it, basically. So let's not forget that. But I think the bigger question comes down to is this: what do the Heat do from now? Honestly, I don't think they need to do much except maybe get one or two more players in place to go to that next level. But we'll see how that works out. The Nuggets, they're definitely, I mean, they could keep the team as is, but I think they're going to need one more player basically to maintain themselves basically, because this existing team will not last that long. Murray and Jokic are good, but the problem is the surrounding cast, Porter and Gordon, if they keep up, then possibly, but I think they need one more sort of tier 2 star, basically, tier 2 all star, or maybe like low end tier 2 all star type of person, basically. The Heat, it's a question of like, what do they do? I mean, Jimmy Butler's not going to leave, so they need someone to come in, a pure power forward that could come in and help out on the and on the boards with Bam, but also get some 3-point shooting at the same time as well too. Um, I could say this though, as like it was an interesting. I will say this: there was an interesting debate going on First Take. Um, who would you rather have, Butler or Jason Tatum? Who is the better person, basically? Personally, if we're talking between now and last year, I would say Jimmy Butler in a heartbeat. Quite honestly, Jimmy Butler. Now, Stephen Smith was talking about like Tatum was all the way. He would have taken take Tatum all the way because of the fact that he's got the youth. But yeah, he is young enough. But the thing is, he doesn't have the experience compared to Butler. He's not clutch like Butler is. I mean, in this case, Butler wasn't truly clutch in the last 3 games, but all the throughout the playoff series, he's been clutch. So with that, I mean, honestly, yeah. If it's a case where like you have to choose between now and the next 3 years, then yeah, I would go with Tatum in a heartbeat. But I would have, Butler's definitely better than him right now as we speak. Right now, right at this moment in time, he's definitely better than Butler's definitely better than Tatum. Now the question is like, what is? I think honestly, in this situation, if let's say Butler was on the Golden State Warriors, I think they would have had this series. I mean, they would have had this year and next year's and probably the year after's uh, uh, finals. Basically, like they would probably be in a full-on dynasty like the Bulls were. The real question is who becomes the superstar? Is it Curry or is it a Butler at this point? Because they kind of remind me a little bit of like the Curry Butler type of situation, or the Jordan Pippen type of thing, or more of the Jordan slash. Well, actually, I don't want to say Jordan, but more like the Stockton Pippen type of thing, or more of the I would say more of the Stockton Pippen type of thing, more than anything else. Because Butler is really good in defense. If I had my choice, as a Knicks fan, I would have loved to have him to come to the New York Knicks when he was leaving the Philadelphia 76ers, but I knew the Knicks were never going to land him. He was never going to come to the Knicks. He hated the Knicks. I think definitely hated ownership, so forget about that. So let's not talk about that. I think now, with the way things have changed, thanks to Randall, mostly Randall and now Brunson, I think more and more players are willing to come to the Knicks now, especially Tibbs as well too. Tibbs definitely changed the dynamics of the team itself. But I was gonna say in this situation, like, granted, the same thing with Tatum. If Tatum was on on the team with the Golden State Warriors, they'd be probably in there as well too, or even better. You know what? I think he would have done really well. I think he would have really thrived in this case. Where Butler, had he gone to the Suns with Booker and CP3, I think they would have done really, really well. Considering I think Booker and Butler alone, without CP3, they could have still made it to the finals. Every game day. I think they just needed that big man, one big man. Basically, I think, like I said, the Heat are just one star short of like repeating basically, and being at the top of the tier with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers.
Finds Strus back to Lowry. There it is, three-pointer. Won't go. Rebound, Caldwell Pope.
But I'm going to say that
the Heat will let it play out. It's over.
Come next year,
at last,
it's going to be definitely different as to like who is more favored at this point. We're going to see how the we got to see how this whole thing evolves essentially, and let's not forget. Let us not forget. I think this whole dynamic of the Jokic Murray scenario comes down to the point where they had Carmelo Anthony. When they traded to the Knicks, they used that Knicks pick basically, essentially, and because of that, it worked out in the long run. Because think about it, Carmelo Anthony could have left free agency because he was going to be a free agent. The Knicks just were too desperate that they needed him, and they if they'd waited till the end of the year, they could have signed Carmelo easily. They could have signed him. So in that situation, I mean, that was one of those things where I think those draft picks definitely helped out in the long term for them. But also I think it helped the fact of with the trade of Carmelo, it helped. Essentially sort of helped them get the necessary personnel in place to essentially know how to draft and look for talent. Like, remember, Jokic was a second-round draft pick, like the low 41s. It was pretty amazing how they got him. So, I mean, every team passed up on him, and that was one of the things where the Knicks could have gotten there and, taken it, basically. And at the same time as well, too, is I think Denver learned from the Carmelo Anthony trade how to build a foundation of your star players for the long-term goal. And I think everyone started realizing that at the same point, because after the departure of LeBron from Cleveland to Miami, and similar with Carmelo from Denver to New York, I think teams realized you know what, you wanted players that were going to stay there for the long term, even though, like, granted, they may not win championships in the early going, but build around it, like, sort of like the Jordan type of thing, basically, the Bulls system. Have a Jordan who doesn't want to leave, who wants to build a championship team around him, basically. And I think that was one of the things. Like, I mean, honestly, look, Butler, if he stayed, he could have been a guy that could have stayed in Chicago, could have built a championship around him, but it didn't happen. Now they got Levine, but we'll see what happens with the Bulls in this case. The Knicks, the same thing. I think the Knicks basically, they should, I think they need to revamp their draft, not their draft capital, but their draft scouting, or the scouts, basically. Because Porzingis was a pure luck situation. And then, of course, but outside of that, they haven't really had any really decent, good draft picks, first or second rounds, quite honestly. I mean, Mitch Robinson, yes, he's one good thing. Grimes seems to be turning out really well as quickly, but they're not the superstars that you expected them, that you would hope to be, like what Jokic was or as Giannis was, basically. I mean, you have to be patient enough with them so that they can build out. I mean, Toppin, good raw talent, but it seems like they wasted that draft pick on someone that they could have just traded off and gotten someone else at that point as well, too. Actually, you know what? Let me take a look and see, like, in that draft pick. I'm going to pause it for a second here. Actually, I stand corrected. Actually, I just realized Emmanuel quickly was not drafted by the New York Knicks. He was actually drafted by the in 2020 by the Oklahoma City Thunder. But then, of course, then traded to New York at that point. But with it, I mean, honestly, it's one of those things where I don't know, like, in that draft year, basically, Anthony Edwards is the decent one that came out. LaMelo Ball, of course, too. And then, of course, there's Tyrese Halliburton, which the Knicks could have picked up, but they already had a point guard at that point, or 2 point guards. Why bother? So honestly, I mean, the Knicks could have just traded that draft picks for more draft capital. I think that could have worked out for them in the long haul, basically. But quite honestly, it doesn't seem. I mean, granted, it's 2020. He was drafted in 2020, but in this case, 2020. It's like 3 years later. You see some progress, but not as much progress, like compared to like the R.J. Barrett. R.J. Barrett himself hasn't really produced as one would hope to, basically. And let me look at the year that he was drafted with the draft players that were picked. Give me a second. I'm going to pause. Yeah, like in the 2019 draft year. I mean, yeah, R.J. Barrett was the number 3. He's never been an all-star compared to John Morant and Zion Williamson, of course. With John Morant, of course, well, there are now issues, but in reality, who knows what he would have done with the Knicks. Chances are he'd be in jail right now at this point, honestly, because like him being in the New York area, or even LA for that matter, if he was in one of those two, forget about it. Forget about it. Who knows what would have happened with him. But quite honestly, it's one of those things where it would have been interesting to see if RJ Barrett would have produced. But I think we got another year with Barrett to see how how he develops. I'm hoping he does, but it's hard to say, quite honestly. And then, of course, the question is like, with those two players, how long can they last, honestly? Because no one knows. No one knows how long they can last. Because you've got, like the Knicks, when they chose Kevin Knox, I mean, that was a mistake on their part in the 2018 draft pick. I mean, they had, Shal Alexander, which they could have picked up. If anything, if they could have traded for other players, like they could have picked up Jalen Brunson that year for nothing, practically, when the Mavericks picked him up. Actually, Brunson and Jokic were both, drafted the same year. And then, of course, there's, with the Knicks having, like, almost no one in place for them at that point, that yeah. Pausing here for a second. Yeah, sorry, I lost track. I was muted for pause for quite a while, but I mean, even in the 2018 draft when they drafted Kevin Knox, it turned out to be the wrong draft pick, of course. Which you're going to have busts here and there, but at the same time, I think this is one of those things where they knew they could have put it this way, their scouts could have drafted much more better. Or the scouts could have scouted much more better to figure out like some of the stuff, basically, and they didn't. Honestly, like anyone before Knox, that was drafted, they could have picked up on the cheap, like Jalen Brunson, of course, like I said. And fortunately, they got Mitch Robinson. That was one of the things where they were lucky with them. I think they got really lucky with Mitch Robinson because like they figured, okay, he was a second round draft pick, not going to be worth much. He, like they had no one else to pick up. Let's just test him out and see how he works out. Basically, like as a raw talent. It turned out to be good. Maybe he can develop into someone really good. I mean, hope maybe like a Bam Adebayo. He can probably do really well. I mean, he's got that defensive skill sets. All he's got to do is now put in the offensive side of things, and he works out in the long term. Same thing with what's his face. I guess with like maybe RJ Barrett. Maybe he does something. Who knows? We'll see what happens from there. But with that, I'm not sure. But like I said, I think with the Heat and the Nuggets, I think will definitely be in the playoffs again next year for sure. The Heat, most likely, if they keep the team as is between the two teams, they will definitely get into the playoffs. The question is like, will they be able to get far into the playoffs and into the finals again? Denver, it's a hard thing to say because, yeah, they got a really solid team, but the thing is, a healthy Suns team and a healthy Warriors team. Granted, the Warriors are old, and definitely a healthy, very healthy Sacramento Kings team changes the whole Western Conference. On the Eastern side of things, or Eastern Conference side of things, a healthy Celtics, yeah, but a healthy, a healthy Philadelphia 76ers team and healthy Bucks team, specifically 76ers, and if Harden stays, those two should go far too. And like I think the Heat will have challenges at that point. And let's not forget, like I think the Bucks, they might get one more player to like get back into the finals again at that point as well too. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Please leave your comments in the comment section. I do read my comments. I do respond to them when they warrant a response and when they do get notified. Let me know what your thoughts are. I mean, honestly, do you think the Heat and Denver Nuggets are going to keep the same team, or do you think they're going to improve upon it by getting one more player, or do you think they're going to trade them off to whomever basically at this point to maybe get something as a result of it? And at the same time, with the Knicks, what do you think the Knicks should do? Should they trade off Randall? Should they trade Barrett? Should they trade Mitch Robinson as well as Toppin, one of these players, to get like another superstar back in place to get them farther into the playoffs? Do you think Randall can help them out? I honestly don't know. You can see some of my prior videos in my channel, and I discuss that a little bit more. I'll probably discuss it more down the line as well too. Let's see what happens as the agencies and as well as the draft comes about. Even though the Knicks have no one in the draft this year, let's see what happens. And of course, if you love, like my video, like my channel, like my content, or if you, and are not subscribed, please subscribe. If you don't like them, but you still watch them, you're welcome to troll me if you want to on the comment section. No judgment here. You're welcome to do so, but I ask if you are not subscribed, please subscribe. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, and of course, unrehearsed. Until next time.